Low quality fans of a high quality Bruins team. Guess who's back with a brand new rap? And I don't mean rap as in a new case of chocolate. Nope, that's not what we're gonna sing on this channel. But I'm back. Some of you might not have known that I've left because 32 videos came out over the past few weeks and they kind of flopped, but hey, it was a fun project for me, so it is what it is. Look, you're not gonna bat 1,000. You got to get some stuff wrong. A lot of people didn't like the fact that I was doing individual videos for them all. I kind of like the project. It is what it is. Hope some of you enjoyed it. We went through 32 teams, each one with a reason that they're gonna win the cup. I had fun with it. It was a ton of work to do, so I had fun. Doesn't matter. I'm back. Training camp has opened. I was in Boston. For the first day of training camp. And I had a flight at 11 o'clock out of Logan. If that flight was at like 4, I could have gone to Warrior and I could have watched a little bit. But no. Nope. I'm not smart enough to schedule it all. I have been in Europe for the past like 16 days. I might do a video on the trip and tell you guys about it if you're interested. I'd certainly have some stuff to talk about. But really, this video is about some battles going on in camp. I'll bring up the camp roster right here. And it'll probably take up the whole screen because there's a ton of names. But there's not a lot of interesting stuff. There's no veterans that are like interesting ads for PTOs. None of the young guys, we're going to talk a little bit about it, not too many of those young guy names are really forcing their way into anything. This is just due diligence camp stuff. Some of it's a little pat on the butt, like nice job getting to camp and see what you can do. Try to force yourself to stay a little longer. Those first cuts will happen after a couple preseason games, and you'll see the expected names to get cut down. The guys like Liselle, Mikulov, McLaughlin, like they should stick around for the majority of the camp. But it'll be interesting to see how that kind of goes along. If you see one of those names get cut in the first round of cuts, you'd certainly, we'll talk about it, that'll be something worthy to talk about. I'm just excited to be back. I mean, it's literally, I came in like 7 or 8 o'clock last night. It's early in the morning. It's about, not early. It's 9 o'clock in the morning the next day. Just feels nice to sleep in your own bed and to be back with my dogs, who I missed more than anything. I was dying out there thinking about them. And I missed making videos and chilling. OBS updated, so this might be a little weird if it's not timed out correctly. We're gonna have to figure it out. This is a weird new setup. Everything's changed. I don't know. Finally feels like fall a little bit in South Carolina. Just a little bit. Woke up and it was actually a little chill in the air. God, it's like 80 degrees during the day here still. It sucks. First thing I want to talk about real quick, get it out of the way. Nothing to do with the training camp. I keep wanting to call it prospect camp. It's not a prospect camp. It's a training camp. The Bruins add Rapid 7 ads onto their jerseys. I've been well documented. I hate it. The helmet ads I didn't really like, but it's on the helmet. You barely see it. Who cares? I'm a jersey collector, and yes, some of you will laugh. My jersey collection is small in the regards of like, you go to r/hockey jerseys or whatever. Some of these guys have hundreds and hundreds. The hockey guy has thousands, I think, of jerseys. I don't even know. But as a hockey collector, I like my jerseys to be as close to the on-ice stuff as possible. I don't want it to have an ad on it, though. I just hate it. I hate it, personally. I just hate it. The good news is, it's only like, what is that? Like 9 inches, so it's not crazy big on the jersey. So you can see how it blends in well, yada, yada. I just hate it. I'm going to be against it. Extra revenue, blah, blah, blah. It's all going in the owner's pockets. It barely helps. We'll talk about escrow. We'll talk about how it helps the players in the next 2 years or whatever. I get it. I hate it. I just want to be on the record saying I hate it. But let's talk about the interesting stuff, okay? We have 5 battles that are going on in camp that I think are important. And I'm going to list those from least interesting to most interesting. And then we're going to talk about what the lineups are going into the season, what they're expected to be. I'm only going to touch the forwards because the defensemen are basically locked in because Grizz and Mac are out to start. It's Lindholm, Zaboro likely. It's Riley, Carlo, and then it's Forbort Clifton. That's fine. Whatever. But the forwards are interesting. Not a ton going on with the goalies, but we'll get there. But let's talk about the battles going on. And the least interesting battle is actually defenseman. And that's Mike Riley versus Zaboral. The reason this is not interesting at all to me is because I think it's already over. This battle was won before it began. Zaboral is your guy on that right side next to Lindholm to start the season. The reason being, of course, it is still a battle, so don't let me sit here and be like 100%. But Zaboral has such a head start, not because of his own play, although it was very good before the injury, but because Mike Riley was horrid on the right side last season. I challenge anyone to find me some statistics that tell me Mike Riley is actually underrated on that right side. He could not handle being on the right side on the third pair. We could talk about that being not fair to him, maybe not having as much help next to him as he wanted. I don't even remember who his most prominent partner on that third line was. I would guess Forbort. But yeah, it was bounced around a lot last year. But Mike Riley couldn't handle the right side. If you're not going to throw him suddenly against a top competition. If Zaboral is anywhere close to what he showed last year before the ACL tear, you put him up on that right side with Lindholm. And he's going to get first crack there. Not a massive battle to me because Zaboral is such a lead. And they're pretty similar players in a lot of ways that you just don't see Riley jumping past him. So that's your first battle. Not a very interesting one, though. The second one gets a whole bunch more interesting. Trent Frederick versus himself. God, that's lame. It could have made that so much more interesting. It's another low-stakes battle, but I find it really fascinating because Freddie basically has that third left wing locked up. But under the previous coaching staff, Cassidy mainly, who was, as we're finding out, harsh to young guys, as more young guys are talking about Cassidy, if he has a poor showing in camp, the eyebrows go up. They look at Freddie and go, what's going on with you, right? He still starts the season on that third left wing. That doesn't change. Really, no matter how bad a camp he has, I don't think he's capable of a bad enough camp that he gets bumped from that spot. But if he has a bad camp, not up to the expectations you would set, then all of a sudden, you're looking at some of the younger guys and going, this guy is short leash. Because come October 12th in that first game, if he's floundering, you're shuffling the bottom six immediately. You have no reason to hold on to anyone in the bottom six as it stands right now other than Coyle and Smith. Those are the two guys, and we're going to talk about a Smith battle later. Those are the two guys that are like guaranteed their spots, longer leash than you would expect. No, a long leash. A leash you would expect. Coyle's locked in. He's our best third line center option. And Smith has shown, streaky as he is an excellent third right winger. Those are two locks. Frederick is far from a lock. And the reason it's versus himself is because most of the battle that he has goes on up here. Makes doofus mistakes sometimes. He doesn't make the right moves all the time. He gets worked up. He gets under people's skin. Yeah, sure. But then he takes the penalty. That's not how you do it. It's a fine line. It's a difficult role to play. But he has to settle himself. And we talked about it all last year. When his game's simple, you really love it. Get the pucks on net, forecheck hard, be on time for your forecheck assignments, play defense, and he is good defensively, and get under other players' skins. Simplify. When you try to do too much, you take sloppy penalties, you give up things on the defensive end, you turn the puck over in the offensive end, it's bad. He will benefit from simplifying. That's when he was at his best last year. The third battle I want to talk about, right in the middle ground of interesting battles, Swayman versus Ullmark. We talked about it a ton last year, all year last year. It's going to be the same thing this year until one guy really grabs the position by the horns. He's going to grab it. And you know who he is? We all want it to be Swayman. Nothing against Ullmark. Love Ullmark. I want this to be the best tandem in the league. But Swayman is a guy we're looking to be our future. Ullmark is the guy in the meantime. Why not just have Swayman be the guy now? You want to see Swayman take that next step. This is a big year for him, and he has the safety net to feel confident about it. It's a battle, though. And I don't know if the goalie who wins the battle is the guy who starts game 1 of the season. I don't know that, because we still are likely looking at a 60-40 split at most as far as distance from each other. But a 55-45 split seems more likely. We'll see what happens. It's something to keep an eye on. All season, though, we're going to be talking about it once again, unless one guy is just killing it. And with the baseline these guys set once they were comfortable, killing it's going to mean like a 920 save percentage. Like a really good save percentage. We'll see what happens. Number 4, we have Foligno and Nosek versus their expectations. The reason I word it like that is because I wanted to put it versus Steen and Liselle and Merkulov, McLaughlin, Beecher, someone I missed, Stanika. I wanted to list it versus the youth, basically. But these guys are potentially on the block not to make room for the young guys. They're potentially on the block to clear money for when the team is fully healthy. That's why we've talked about them and Smith, but Smith doesn't fit this category exactly. We've talked about them potentially being moved, right? Foligno for obvious reasons. And the youth might be better options than one or both of these guys at this point. If that's the case, then they have to be better to force a trade. Foligno's trade will likely require us giving up an asset, something like a third or a fourth in my mind, giving up an asset to actually get him off the books. You either need a young guy so much better than Foligno that he forces him out. Velma appears to think someone could do it. Velma, who can do it? All right, well, you got to give a name. She can't just do that. Or Foligno and Nosek are not worth their money. Obviously, Nosek has a smaller contract, not a big deal. But Foligno, $3.8 million, that's a big ask. He has to find a way to be worth that money. Otherwise, if any of the young guys are even close, you need the best team you can put on the ice this year because Berge and Krejci are on those 1 years. You can't just go, oh, well, the leadership. No, you need to put the best team you can on the ice. That's important this year. Really important this year. We're not a rebuilding team. We're a team trying one last gasp at a cup. Like, let's call it what it is. It's unfortunate, but this is a last gasp. This is not some beginning of a march toward a cup where you would sit guys and let them learn lessons. And no, you need the best team you can make. And if Foligno doesn't have it this year, he said some real positive stuff going into camp, but I mean, yeah, everyone does every year. The money has to make sense this year particularly. So when I say Foligno and Nosek versus their expectations, it's their expectations a salary is setting. Because if they're not worlds better than the youth below them, save the $3 million, put in an ELC, and walk away, bud. Attach that third by Foligno. That sucks to say, but that's where we are right now. And the most interesting battle of camp, which I did not expect to be the case, but it really is. It's Smith versus Liselle. I know. This is partially because we're fans and we get excited about prospects and Liselle's the shiny new toy. I know that. But this is a more legitimate battle than some of you are giving it credit for. It's heavily skewed to Smith because he has the history of being able to play in the NHL at a high level and be competitive. And when he's on, he is a huge addition to our bottom six. Huge. But when he's off, not so much. The third line is not a checking line. It's not. It is a possession forward, a hard checking forward, and a trigger man. That is our third line. Our third line is expected to possess, to get the puck back, and to score. Like a good line would, right? The first and second lines are scoring lines. This is a possession line with a trigger man. This is a dump it in, get the puck, trigger. That's what this third line is. Trigger man is Smith. If Liselle's got a better trigger, all of a sudden the phone starts ringing a little more often. Or I guess we start ringing other phones more often. Because if you think Liselle can slot into that third, which is not the same thing as putting him on the fourth line, I want to be very clear about that. If you think that he can go on the third and be a real addition to them offensively, then Smith is the perfect guy to move. Because the money, so $3 million, something like that, because you wouldn't be losing out because you think Liselle's going to get better results, and you get the young guy into the league and get him moving sooner. It's a huge ask from Liselle. He needs to be way better than Smith to even make this a conversation. But that is how Liselle gets in without more injuries. DeBrusk is not going anywhere right now. They're really going to give him some leash. You're not forcing Pasternak out of this fucking lineup. Get out of here. What am I even saying? And Liselle doesn't belong on the fourth line. He's not a checking forward. He should not be on the fourth line. You're asking him to do things that he's not capable of doing because he's still small. He's arguably too small for the NHL right now. That's his biggest knock. And defense a little bit. But Smith is a reliable third-line guy. And to force a guy like that down or to force you to trade him, I mean, Liselle needs to bury pucks. Needs to bury them. That is where most of my interest lies. Because A, I just want to see what Liselle can do. And B, that'd be huge news. That would be mind-blowing for him to be so good that you pushed a guy that helps the team off the team. You don't drop Smith to the fourth line, most likely. You really don't. We're going to get into why that gets more complicated in a second. This is a real circumstance that I don't think enough people are giving real credit to. So that's my 5. Mike Riley versus Zaboral, Trent Frederick versus himself, Swayman versus Olmark, Foligno and Nosek versus their salaries, and Smith versus Liselle. Let me know if there's any other battles that you're really taking a look at for this camp. Lastly, I want to talk quickly. We're already at 20 minutes of recording, but that's going to get edited down. We have a little bit of a problem. These are the forward lines for us. Day one, when everyone's healthy that's supposed to be healthy. So this doesn't include Marchand, McAvoy, Grizz. I mean, McAvoy and Grizz are defensemen. We're only talking about forwards. I'm just rambling at this point. Does not include Marchand because we know he's not going to be healthy for day one, October 12th. Zacha, Bergeron, DeBrusk. That's your top line. We've already talked about how Zacha's going to be the first chance with Bergeron. I think they keep him up there to start the season on a high note for him. DeBrusk likely is going to stay there as well because there's not a lot of room elsewhere unless Frederick flames out. Hall, Krejci, Pasta. We know that. Frederick, Coyle, Smith. We pretty much know that one too. Foligno, Nosek, Steen. Now, while these guys are still on the team, we have to consider that they're not going to get put down in the AHL. Moving Foligno to the AHL, which we should do, is unlikely. He is a chemistry guy, I guess. I don't know. Players love him. They want to keep him on the team. I'm not going to speak a lot to that. Nosek, I still like Nosek. He's a very good face-off guy. He's versatile in the bottom six. He can do a lot, but he's not putting the points up. And again, we're not asking for 60 points from you, man. You're bottom six, but you gotta get the puck on net, and you gotta make some things happen. And it just has not been happening. Steen, I have no reason why I would ever push Steen, unless his camp is terrible. But Steen should be in the bottom six from what we saw last year. Typically, with healthy scratches, you have a defenseman, which I have no clue who is going to be to start the season. A piece of me wants to be Ryan Mast just for shits and gigs. But all of our NHL defensemen will be used in the game. So there's got to be another guy that's brought up to be a healthy scratch. I'm just not sure who it's going to be. It might be Berglund. I'm not sure. Your forward, who's probably a healthy scratch to start the season, is Studnicka. And Studnicka, you can't leave as a healthy scratch for long because he's walking at the end of the year if he doesn't get a real shot this year. Or you're trading him at the deadline and he has no value. I mean, you can't put him through waivers, though. You just can't. He is waiver eligible this year. You can't do it. Where does the youth slot in? This is one of the big things with Monty is everyone's like, well, we're finally going to see some youth. Where? Steen? I mean, that's literally the only spot on the lineup where he's available. Like, that's Steen's spot until he loses out on it. So what we have that has to clear waivers is Wagner, which is going to happen. He's going to get sent down. Studnicka, AJ Greer, who was a point-per-game player in the AHL last year, although he likely doesn't make the lineup either, and he likely doesn't get one of those healthy scratch spots. AJ Greer was a Devil, I believe, last. We picked him up, so that's a whole different conversation. But being sent down, Liselle, Lauko, Beecher, who they really like Beecher right now, but where the fuck does he go? Toporowski, who I expect will get an AHL contract, but that isn't for sure. Mast, McLaughlin, Merkulov, all these guys don't have to go through waivers. They get sent down. There's some hype names on there. Liselle mostly, Beecher, Lauko, depending on how you feel, but we're kind of out on Lauko at this point. But none of those guys have any room unless some of the stuff we talked about previously happens. Foligno just gets, like, we can't fucking have this guy on this team anymore. He's not worth the contract by. Like, that has to happen for another guy to have an opportunity. And then that other guy is Studnicka. There's not room for the youth this year. Which, to be fair, is fine, because we previously said, hey, we need the most competitive team we can put on paper right now. On the ice. We need it to be competitive. As good as possible. There's just not a lot of room. Next year, there's a ton of room. We have so many contracts coming off the books next year. Ton of room. This year's not really that. And unless certain guys flame out or have injuries, we have to be comfortable with letting a lot of these guys spend some time in the minors, which doesn't stunt growth at all. People, I have seen takes where people are like, Liselle, Beecher, they can't go to the AHL. They're too good. First of all, Beecher was not good on a loaded Michigan team last year. Yeah, he got forced too far too far down the lineup, asked to do things that aren't really his game, blah, 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 blah. He wasn't very good. He had a really good prospect tournament. We've seen that before, guys. Beecher should start in the AHL. Liselle, he can absolutely use more time marinating. Come on. Age like fine wine. There's no reason to force him up early unless you literally can't keep him out of the lineup. Unlikely. What we're looking at right now is we have our healthy scratches, and they've got to be filled by guys that you really do want to rotate in. And so Studnicka and Steen, I expect to be swapping games. But that means Studnicka doesn't get to play center. That means Studnicka likely playing on the right side unless they bump Nosek over, and Nosek's the better faceoff guy. This is way more of a logjam than we expected to. And his camp will be really important, but when you kind of look at it, you go, the coaching would have to take some ballsy moves, sitting some of these guys, being like, hey, you're not good enough. And that can cause some issues in itself. Like, I don't want to pretend everyone's a prima donna because they're not, but there's certainly some arguments for, man, you sit down Nosek, you sit down Foligno, guys looking around like, what the fuck? These are veteran guys. They deserve to be in the league. Move them at least. And then you're under pressure to move them. It's hard. It's a really hard circumstance. The lines I told you are the ones I expect to be the ones, October 12th. I expect those to be the lines. And I expect Studnicka to be a healthy scratch and him to cycle in with Steen. And everyone else, you get a turn when you get a turn. Injuries happen. That's tough. In camp, that's not the message, obviously. Everyone gets an opportunity. You win the job, you win the job. No backdoor politics. It just ain't the truth. It's just not. We'll see if Foligno gets buried. I doubt it. Nosek ain't getting buried. And waivers, you can't put Studnicka down through him. That's just dumb. You don't really want to put Greer through him, but you do if you have to. Sorry, Wags, you're definitely going through him. This is a harder situation than people give it credit for because it's almost all locked in. And that's a bummer for a lot of guys. I hope something surprises me out of it. I really do. And we're going to have more conversations. Tomorrow we get a game review for the preseason. Like, there's a lot to be decided, but there's really not. Don't you hate that? I hate it. Anyway, I'm back! Go Bees!